hello to everybody. Daga ho. It's such a pleasure to be back in Hong Kong for me personally. I was almost 5 years here as Consul General of Canada, and it was really, I have to say, the pinnacle of my career. Anyone who gets that job should consider themselves very lucky, and you have a fantastic Consul General here in the form of Rachel Bedlington. And a great team at the Consulate General. And I'd like to say, from where I sit, a big thank you to the Government of Canada for the support that's been provided to this event. And as someone who now heads up a not-for-profit foundation, a national public institution, I appreciate deeply the support that sponsors of all types provide for events of this kind. So it's great to see the support that has been provided for this event. And I've been participating in the Transpac conference since 2016. And I have to say, this is really by far the biggest and the best. And on behalf of all of us, again, I'd just like to recognize the fantastic team at CanCham HK and the leadership of Madeleine. Please join me in thanking again. This one really is the best one. And now we bring you to the best panel. And before I turn to our speakers, I'm going to take the opportunity that I was promised to say a few words about what we're doing at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. And you know, if you're working in Hong Kong, the chances are that what you're doing is about connecting. It's about connecting people. It's about connecting institutions. It's about connecting money with opportunities to return more money. And it's about connecting resources to things that will be built and make the world a better place for all of us. The Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, la Fondation Asie-Pacifique du Canada, was established in 1984 by an act of the Canadian Parliament to be a national public institution, independent from government, that would have a mandate to promote understanding and awareness between people, firms, institutions, societies, from Canada to the Asia-Pacific region. Our definition of Asia begins in South Asia in the West, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, South Asia, and encompasses Southeast Asia, East Asia, North Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific. And our mandate is to build, basically to build connections between Canada and Asia. It was a novel idea in 1984 at a time when Canada was still in an era really of focusing on itself as a European creation in North America and as a part of a North American community, and really not looking to the Pacific. Boy, times have really changed now. And since I left Hong Kong in 2021 to join the foundation at our head office in Vancouver, I have found myself and my 45 colleagues at the foundation, our head office in Vancouver. We have an office in Toronto, and we will be opening an office in Asia. I'll say something about that in a minute. We have found ourselves really kind of at the fulcrum of this amazing tilt towards what many of us now call the Indo-Pacific region on the part of Canada. And it's something, as you heard this morning, the Government of Canada has brought forward an Indo-Pacific strategy that is meant to be an all-of-Canada strategy. I can tell you, even before that strategy was articulated, that large segments of Canadian society, the business community, the academic communities, the civil society, were already there, or already moving in that direction to explore new opportunities in Asia, in a situation Canadians found themselves in where the relationship with the United States was not as solid or reliable as we had thought for many years. Still a fantastic relationship. Nobody would not want to trade places with Canada for where we are in the world. But one where we clearly needed to diversify. And I think Canadians increasingly appreciate that the global growth story really is centered on the Indo-Pacific region these days. So at the foundation, as I said, we're independent of government. We are governed by a board of directors, a few members of which are appointed by the Government of Canada, but the majority are not. And as the CEO, I'm appointed by the board, not by the Government of Canada. That said, we work closely with governments across Canada at all levels, the provinces, the federal government, the municipal governments, and their agencies. And we are vigorously pursuing our mandate these days to help Canadians to understand and navigate Asia better, and to help Asia to understand and appreciate what Canada has to offer. And you all are at the center of that. A major initiative that I'll mention here, it's come up a couple of times in passing already today, is something we call the Canada in Asia conferences. So this now is established. It's going to be a signature annual event to bring together Canada-connected people and firms and institutions from across Asia, and basically everyone who is anyone in Asia engagement from across Canada. We formed a partnership last year between Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada and Universities Canada to have the Canadian universities for the very first time in their history to work together, all the major universities to invite their alumni from all across Asia. The largest center by far for this is right here in Hong Kong, but from all across Asia to come together in a gathering that would be not primarily about being alumni, although there's a time set aside for that at the conferences, but to be the critical mass around which we would then bring in business leaders, chambers of commerce, government agencies, thought leaders, leading researchers and tech innovators from Canada, and their partners and potential partners from across Asia. And the first time we did it was last February in Singapore. It was an outstanding success, exceeded all of our expectations, and we've now established that every year in late February, we will do this Canada in Asia conference in one form or another. And this year, next month, we will be convening two-day thematically focused conferences, February 26th and 27th on agri-food, and 28th and 29th on climate solutions, where we're bringing together thought leaders, tech innovators, large and small innovative companies from across Canada, as well as thought leaders, research community leaders from institutions across Asia, and corporate leaders and chambers of commerce, and we're really hoping for a good turnout from Hong Kong. And I have these postcards that some of you may have seen. I actually have a pretty good supply here. So please, after this, I'd be happy to share with you more details about the conference. And the pitch I would make for this is, I mean, it's not a Canada-Singapore conference. I want to be very clear about that. It's a Canada-Asia conference that is happening in Singapore because we want to capture major participation from South Asia, a region that considers Singapore as being kind of a part of it, as well as East Asia and the Pacific. And the pitch is basically this. For those among your contacts or in your organizations who are interested in knowing about what's the very latest coming out of Canada in these critical sectors. So agri-food and climate solutions were by far the popular choice among our stakeholders to do these conferences on a thematic basis. This is in one place we're gathering all the people that you need to meet from Canada in these sectors to come away after 2 or 4 days much more deeply informed and better networked to take relationships forward in these areas. Every second year, we're going to do a big general conference, as we did last February, We had 24 university presidents out for that. 30 universities were present in one form or another from across Canada. In the alternate years, we will do thematically focused conferences. And so we've started knowing the importance of food security in Asia, top of mind across the region, and what Canada has to offer. We started with agri-food, and then climate solutions, of course, is top of mind for everybody in the world these days. And Canada, as I am learning increasingly, has amazing things to offer. So please, I'd love to talk to you about this, and join us if you can in Singapore, and bring your friends and your business partners. So this session is about connectors, and we really want to bring together the themes that Madeleine opened the morning with, as we are talking about how do you connect from sitting here in Hong Kong, how can we be connectors across Asia? How can we broaden Canada's vision of the Indo-Pacific to diversify across Asia? And what role can Hong Kong and Canada and partners based in Hong Kong and Canada together play in achieving this and to building more connections from across Asia and across Canada for our mutual prosperity? And we have with us three really exceptional panelists joining us. I'm going to ask them in a minute to introduce themselves. I'm very grateful to be able to be on the stage with them. Anna-May Koo and Ivan Lam and Julie Labrec-Pagé. I'm going to let them tell their stories, and then we'll get into the discussion, and we will start with you, Anna-May.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna-May Koo. Apologize for the very sexy voice today. It's fell victim to today's weather. So, I'm Anna-May, and I just want to start off by thanking Madeleine. You're a force of nature, and this is an amazing conference. I also want to thank Alex and Vivian for bringing me into the chambers. So just a little bit about myself. I was born and bred here. I basically started out my career in finance, covering real estate, private equity for Asia Pacific in various banks from North America, and then afterwards moved into the law. I was lucky enough to be able to continue my two-track professions and loves, which is the law and real estate. So apart from the law, in which I still practice, I am an intellectual property mainly specialist for clients such as Yves Saint Laurent, Apple, Mercedes-Benz across Asia Pacific, and also, helping them in China, Hong Kong, protection of their IP. Apart from that, I also developed real estate. I built a 240,000 square foot modern industrial space in Tuen Mun, which I'm sure nobody in the audience have been to, but it is a part of Hong Kong, I promise you. And we got various design awards for the building. So I guess Madeleine wanted me to speak a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of my life, and also how I've been helping companies. So obviously I help big brands, right? But also I also worked at venture capital, Horizon Ventures prior, and helped startups in the region. So, in my spare time, I also sit on various government boards, assisting with a little bit of policy, and that includes Hong Kong Customs and also the Housing Authority of Hong Kong right now, previously in various other government boards. So that's, I also just got qualified in the Greater Bay Area as a lawyer, so a little bit of, one of the hardest examinations in my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me here. My name is Ivan Lam. I'm with LPS, it's a family of Lenovo. I'm currently VP of Digital Technology Solutions Group. What we do is we help digital transform customers across different industries with digital technologies. And we're currently the largest IT service provider here in Hong Kong. And in the past, we actually expanded into mainland China and Southeast Asia in between 2010 and 2020. And we're now one of the leading ones in the regions as well. So it's a good story in itself in terms of how a Hong Kong-based company expanding into mainland China and Southeast Asia. I ran 2 startups before, and I'm also kind of volunteering my time as a mentor for some of the startups founders at the Science Park, just to share my experience and what things to avoid and so on and so forth. So prior to LPS, I worked across different regions, different industries in Canada, in Southeast Asia, in mainland China, and back to Hong Kong. So in the, I think just last month, I was in the Hong Kong FinTech Week, and we were invited by one of our friends to join an AI consortium, which is a regional platform to help startups expand from Hong Kong and from Canada to Hong Kong into Southeast Asia. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that later on. Yeah, so born in Hong Kong, Canadian trained engineer, and a proud alum of U of T. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Julie Labrec-Pagé, General Manager Asia, and recently made partner of Camden in Hong Kong. It's a great pleasure to be here alongside with Anime and Evan and Jeff, of course. So Camden is headquartered in Montreal, Canada, which is where I'm from as well. We also have an office in Toronto and an office in Lyon, France. And Camden is the latest addition to our global network. We launched almost 3 years ago to this date. So quite exciting time for us to be in the region. And from Hong Kong, we support mostly global brands with their brand strategy, brand communication, and creative assets for campaigns in Asia. We have a little show reel, so it's better for you to see it from your own eyes. 55 seconds that sums up pretty much what we've been up to in the last year. Yeah. Thank you. So we have, quite a lot of work in that short video, yeah. We're a big team, 80 people globally. We're yet have this boutique approach, so each office is capped to 30 people because we want to be connected to what we do and why we chose this profession. And from Hong Kong, we work with financial services companies, beauty, F&B, as well as sports brands. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, terrific introductions from each of you, and I'll come back to you, Anime, to ask you to say a little bit more about your experience, as a lawyer, helping businesses, both large and small, to expand into other jurisdictions from Hong Kong and through Hong Kong. How are you seeing Hong Kong's role as a super connector in the region, and how does it compare with other cities in the region and communities, professional communities in the region who aspire to play that role. What's been happening lately?
Thank you, Jeff. Very disappointed. Your conference was in Singapore. Just just kidding. So I think actually, contrary to what a lot of people think, Hong Kong has become even more important a role as a super connector. I'm sure I don't know actually, but there's a huge rush of going to Shenzhen for shopping, retail, and food nowadays. But if you go, really, and if you're not a part of the Chinese technology ecosystem, it's pretty impossible to get around, order a taxi, have a meal. Taking cash may help you in a Hong Kong taxi, but it certainly would not in a Chinese taxi. So I think for people, especially first time coming out into the region, having Hong Kong as a base is helpful to start with. Its proximity, it is, obviously a Chinese city, no doubt there, but it still has a lot of the remnants of the colonial past that we have here. We spoke, and Rachel spoke about it earlier, Madeline, the certainty of law, transparency, and all of that. And it really is helpful for companies, large and small, to have some sort of base here. And obviously we act for large multinationals who have big bases in China, have offices in Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, etc. But then they still have a large office here. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't have offices in other areas, but Hong Kong does play a part in helping in the initial stage. It also is actually still a super connector on the outside, on the outbound. I was recently in Shenzhen meeting with some colleagues in Shenzhen law offices, and they are seeing so much outbound flow. Of course, probably less than when, with Chinese economy not doing so well, but we're still seeing a lot of outbound flow, whether it be Hong Kong or further around to Canada, etc. There's a lot of money having to be diversified or going out. Hong Kong's still extremely attractive as a tax jurisdiction, right? I think that is, you go up to China, people are still interested in getting a Hong Kong ID, including the very ultra-wealthy people. Why? Because if you trade stocks and equity, you immediately pay much less tax on capital gains. So there is a huge reason. Of course, Singapore has a huge pull now, being, where family office, etc., all set up. But Hong Kong still has a part, I think, going both ways, inbound and outbound. Yeah.
And I think the outbound story is maybe one that we don't hear enough about outside of Hong Kong, the unique role that Hong Kong still has as that portal going from mainland China out into the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Like, for example, with legal services, right? I think Chinese people, like every people, would prefer to work with their own kind, right? And so they are not sure about what happens in Canada, in America, in Europe, and Hong Kong has a long history of working with the West. So that knowledge plus proximity to China helps the mainland Chinese feel more comfortable with some of the things they're doing. So they want to move money, they want to set up trusts, they want to have their children go abroad, and all that Hong Kong actually serves as a very easy service hub to bring their wealth out. Now, obviously, there are those who are much more sophisticated, but who already set up offices, globally. But there's so many levels of wealth in China, and despite the economy going down, there is still a lot of very wealthy people, and there's still a lot of need for outbound services, investment, and all of that.
Yeah, indeed. And I think you've put your finger on a part of the unique value proposition in Hong Kong, and as a gateway to the world's second largest economy, which even if it's growing more slowly than it was, still on the absolute growth is something that that you can't find elsewhere in the world. But now, Ivan, you've been working. You wear many hats in your life, and you've been working on initiatives to connect, particularly connect tech startups from Hong Kong and also from Canada through Hong Kong to Southeast Asia. And you told me a little bit about Ledger Brains, which I understand, but you can explain more about this, but it's kind of accountants unleashed in some form. And maybe you can tell us a bit more about that and the connector role that is to be played there.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. I think you just gave us a good tagline to use, Accountants Unleashed. Yeah, so it goes back to the Hong Kong FinTech Week back in November. I was just getting together with a bunch of friends, and two of which accountants whom I met back in probably 2019 when I was working in Southeast Asia. And these accountants are very creative accountants, right? So they're more creative in a way in terms of how to use technologies. Don't get me wrong. So they actually leverage technology. What they wanted to do is to, because traditionally they spend about 80% of their time looking at different things like how to do processes, checking things manually, right? So they were thinking, how about we use these 80% of the time to think? So in order to do that, they need to leverage technology. So they created a couple of accounting technology firms just to leverage technologies to do the 80% of the things that they used to do manually, and then leaving most of the time doing the thinking. So that's what they did. And at the same time, they expanded to Hong Kong. They were accepted into the Hong Kong Science Park as one of the tech startups. And so we met up at the Hong Kong FinTech Week. Long story short, we thought, well, maybe we can do something together. So these guys part of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, and they have a mandate to bring up the overall standards of the professional bodies in Southeast, or in Malaysia and in Southeast Asia as a whole. By the way, their corporate governance framework is actually just second to Singapore. It's very advanced in the sense that anything that's new, that's happening around the region, they would pick it up and then they would get implemented right away. So, but at the same time, they needed to give a little bit of a lift with technology, and see Hong Kong has a lot of techs ready to go. But they're just lacking some of the connections in Malaysia or in Southeast Asia. And these guys are well connected over there. And so we thought maybe we can join forces. I recommend some startups over there, and then these guys can take them to market. So that's how the story started. And so I kind of volunteering my time, helping these guys connect the dots and making things happen. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We can't wait to see the show reel from Ledger Brains. And speaking of show reels, we come back to you, Julie. And in the work that you have been doing to bring brands that are established elsewhere, to bring them into Asia and to help them, to advise them, and to help them to appeal locally. What are some of the common denominators that you have found across brands looking to establish in Hong Kong, in China, and in Asia more generally?
Yeah, it's been quite an intense 3 years. We've supported a lot of global brands in crisis time, in growth time, and we've learned a lot of things along the way. And I want to highlight 3, success stories or common denominators to learn from as we grow and as we continue. We've been connecting brands or super connecting brands with a very segmented market in Asia. And one of the key elements is strong foundation. So each brand that we've supported had done the shadow work before reaching out to us. So they had done their strategy. They had a strong brand and a strong brand platform. When I speak about brand, it's not just a logo. It's a lot more elaborated than that. So a brand is about, you know, the mission, the vision, of course, and how you develop all the creative and communicative assets to translate that into the audience that you're trying ultimately to convert. So that requires a lot of strategic thinking, and that's one of the key elements that we like to see when our clients are coming to us. Sometimes we just say, you know, do the work and come back to us in 3 months, and we'll continue working with you. One of the great player that we see in Asia is IKEA. Their brand values are very strong. Sustainability is one of them. When we had the whale episode in Sai-Kong, before, as the boats were getting closer to the whale, they stood up and they communicated on their value, which was sustainability. They didn't say the word sustainability, but they said, if you want to get closer to whale, we have stuffed animals. Some of them include a whale, so come hug them in our basement in Causeway Bay and leave the whale alone. Let it live. Same thing for the giant Teletubbies that was broken a year and a half ago. A young child unfortunately broke it, and there was a big public debate about if the parents should be charged a 50K Hong Kong dollars or not. And IKEA stood up, and instead of saying we're a family brand or family-friendly brand, they said, try to come break the unbreakable Billy bookcase. You know, you can come to our IKEA and test the Billy bookcase. It's unbreakable. So this is very smart. They're very agile, and because they have a strong brand platform, and they're very, very aligned with their brand cultures. The second common denominator would be humility. Some brands come to us and they say, I don't know what's wrong. I've been communicating this way in France or in Canada or in North America, and this is not working. Market is not picking up. And they showed humility by reaching out to us saying we need help, but it would have saved them tremendous time if they had that in mind from the beginning. So having the humility to know that you don't know is actually critical. Costco is one of the key players in that area. We all saw the lineups at the border when they opened in Shenzhen 2 weeks ago. Costco was actually invested tremendous time and energy prior to launching in China to learn from the market. They were digitally present in China 5 years before they were actually opening, gathering all the data, testing the market, and warming up an audience that was ready to be activated as they launched in the country. And that shows a lot of humility from a brand that you wouldn't think would need any humility because they have such a high brand recognition. So that's humility. The third one is doing the work. So study your market, social listening, focus group. We had a great AI solution earlier today that leverage all the AI tools to get to know better your audience, because you have the brand platform. You want to find the shortest link from your brand platform to the audience you're trying to raise awareness, consideration, conversion, and then loyalty to them. So you need to really know your audience to find the most direct path to engage with them.
Those are terrific. So I'll go very quickly, just a quick question for each one of you, and then we're going to come to the audience for your questions. So get ready. Anime, to pick up the conversation about Hong Kong's super connector role, what should Canadian companies, if I go back to Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal, Calgary, talk to Canadian companies, what should someone like me be telling them about the significance of what's happening in the Greater Bay Area and Hong Kong's unique role as the kind of outward-facing part of that? What are the messages?
Thanks, Jeff. I think the Greater Bay Area is one of China's leading areas and one of China's policy to push in terms of manufacturing, well, moving manufacturing away, actually, moving into a service technology hub. I think what you can tell, or what is important for people looking to invest in this area, is to make sure, as an intellectual property lawyer, you have all your intellectual property rights covered before you do anything. China's a first-to-file regime, and so very often, unfortunately, what happens to our clients is they find out they're famous in China before they even entered the market. So that's painful. Second thing is, I think one, as a lawyer, again, thing to remember or think about a bit more is this partnership thing. I mean, really, is it the right model? I think a lot of people go into a different jurisdiction and try a partnership model first. I've seen so many of them go wrong that I just question, maybe sometimes it may make sense to try it out on your own, and put in, I mean, have advisors and perhaps investors, but partners may be a little more challenging, I think. In terms of unraveling them later down the line is something that I see a lot of issues with some of my clients. And a third thing, I think, for people abroad is not to think of China or the GBA region as one thing. It's huge, lots of people. Focus maybe on one city and conquering that and making yourself good there before you do, the rest. I think that's, sometimes people come into a region and think, oh yeah, I'll just, set up one shop and cover 1.2 billion people. It's a little crazy. So I think starting small, doing a lot of groundwork, doing the work, what Julie was saying, totally agree. Those are the things I'd focus on.
That's tremendous. I just want to point out to our audience and to our online audience that you are in this session getting tremendously high quality and normally very high priced advice. So treasure these moments. And then very quickly we'll come back to you, Ivan, and then Julie. Ivan, I just want to follow up with you in introducing tech startups from Hong Kong and from Canada to Southeast Asia. What are you learning about the demand signals from Southeast Asia? What's top of mind? What are the areas where there's the greatest demand and the greatest welcome?
Sure. I think, first off, I think Hong Kong has a very good brand. We were just talking about earlier why people from Hong Kong, companies from Hong Kong are well sought after. So we have a brand of trust, and we get things done. I personally have seen quite a few innovations, being applied in Southeast Asia and the subway lines and so on and so forth. And then when they know you're Canadian, you just added another layer of credibility and trust and comfort. Honestly, I mean, this is not me talking about it. It's like from our friends talking about it. So brand is number one, right? And then which area would you get involved in? And we talked about ASEAN being a big block of 10 nations, and you've got the most advanced Singapore, and then you've got the least developed country on earth, Laos, for example, right? Although they're making remarkable advances, and they're due to graduate in 2026, so which is great news. So what to position and where to position is key, right? So, and I mentioned earlier, Malaysia has a very good corporate governance framework, and they're just second to Singapore, and they're hungry for tech to up the game. And so we found a couple of sweet spots there. So number one, as these professional services are trying to up the game. For example, ESG reporting, they're under the gun to deliver ESG reporting sooner or later, and they're really looking for AI tech on how to help get the reporting done a little bit more effectively and efficiently. So that's number one. Number two is that we see a lot of big techs like NVIDIA. These are in the news, right? So big techs collaborating with Lenovo, creating an AI for all strategy. So in the future, your cell phone, your laptop will have your virtual assistant sitting on there helping you. And at the same time, they're also partnering up with some of the conglomerates in Southeast Asia, like YTL. They have everything under the sun, from cement to telecom to data center to properties and so on. Some of these, by the way, are the key focused areas of the Indo-Pacific strategy as well. So what I'm trying to say is these guys are also looking at putting some techs together to not just revamp their own companies and digital transform themselves. They're also in the process of partnering up with other big techs and some other startups to modernize their business line and offer more services down the road. So there exists a lot of opportunities in this area. So that, I think, number two. The last areas I can think of is training. In terms of professional training, the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers in Malaysia, for example, which is the Hong Kong IB equivalent in Malaysia, they're in the process of also putting together a lot of professional training similar to what we've done in Hong Kong for the FinTech certification program and so on. So these guys are also looking for partners to come up with good solutions and good framework for them to up the game in terms of how they can serve their memberships. So these are some of the low-hanging fruits, I would say, at the very moment. And to Anime's point, I think we probably need to find the right doors to open, the right partners, not a partnership, but people that can help you, open doors and so on. I just want to say the Canadian Trade team has a very strong connections in Southeast Asia, obviously besides Hong Kong, which is amazing, and I've had a very good experience working with them. So Canadian Trade team, some of the associations in Malaysia and in Southeast Asia in general, and obviously your foundation as well would be a good way to get into some of those connections.
Jeff, if I can add to that, sorry, one more point I think is very important. Exactly what Ivan was saying. For China, especially the GBA region, each city is actually earmarked by the government for a different area, right? And because China is such a policy-driven country, you really should look into what those are. And also, each local government and each district have GDP targets, etc. And so they push different areas. So although don't have local partners, definitely befriend and find out which local governments can push your business, because that's hugely helpful. So that's definitely important.
And I think that ties back to, Julie, your point about doing the work, right? You need to research the local environment, find out what are the priorities that have been assigned to those jurisdictions and see how you can leverage that. And I don't know if we'll be allowed to have time for the questions. I want to come back to Julie just on a final round. Camden is expanding around the world, from coming out from Montreal, and 3 years ago established Hong Kong as the hub for APAC. What have you learned in the last 3 years about what the benefits of operating from Hong Kong as a platform, and any surprises along the way?
Yeah, I just want to add that we have as an objective to have 10 offices globally by 2029, and Hong Kong was the first office we launched from scratch. We went through acquisitions for the other offices. So this is, a test and learn for all of us as a network. outside of the basics that we all know, Hong Kong is built for business, easy to connect, a lot of regional headquarters in Hong Kong. We had two very good surprises as we developed here in the region. The first one is we know Hong Kong for the financial services sector, for the professional services, for the tech. We don't hear much about the creative industries. It's 4.5% of our GDP. It's strong, it's very creative, it's growing, and not that we're looking into building partnerships, but we have the right talents or like-minded to really create that synergy and grow in the region, and that's very, very interesting and should be even promoted a little more about Hong Kong. The second element, which is a deal breaker for us as a network, as a global creative agency, is being at the front line of innovations, social innovations and cultural innovations in China from Hong Kong has been tremendous learning for us. China is an amazing lab for anything digital. There's a lot of innovations as well. And we learn from what's happening out there, and we feed the Camden network through our presence in Hong Kong. Social commerce is an example. I feel it's been here forever, and Europe is finally picking up on the trend, and we are much more competitive in Europe now because we have that experience, we have that intel, and we are 2-3 years ahead of our competition in Lyon, in Montreal, and in Toronto because of our presence in Hong Kong. So it's very interesting for us as a network.
So please join me in thanking our tremendous panelists. You hit your marks beautifully. Thank you so much.